On today's show, the Hawks' three-game winning streak is now over after a home loss in lopsided fashion at the hands of the Cleveland Cavaliers on this Saturday. We'll touch on all of what transpired in this game, the big picture, Trae Young's potential absence coming up, and much more, and all of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1635 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you deep in the night here on a Saturday into Sunday. And today's show is brought to you by the folks at LinkedIn Jobs, and they help you to find qualified candidates you want to talk to, and they help you to do it faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Terms and conditions apply. Also, on today's podcast, I should encourage you to make sure first listen each and every day. Please subscribe and check us out anywhere you get your podcasts, places like Apple, Spotify, also YouTube on the video side. And again, anywhere you get your podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you would smash that subscribe/follow button. It'd be very much appreciated and would help us to grow the show in a big way. But today's episode will focus heavily on what became a 116-95 loss for the Hawks at home against the Cavaliers on this Saturday. They fall to 18-24 on the year with this defeat. They had a three-game winning streak that's now over for Atlanta. And as we'll come back to in a little bit, this is basically the definition of a schedule loss in some respects. I know that not everyone buys in that kind of stuff, but if you follow people around the league, in the NBA world, on teams and in coaching staffs and players and training staffs, etc., schedule losses do happen in the NBA, and this is one of those in a lot of different ways. Although, with all that said, they still played very poorly. They never led in this game. They were down double digits basically the entire way. It was never particularly competitive in the second half. And all that said, doesn't erase all the vibes of positivity from a three-game winning streak. It also does not mean that this team is now playing great either. So it is what it is, but a kind of a ugly-ish home loss on a Saturday evening. The Hawks came into this game underdogs at FanDuel, as you might imagine, given that they landed last night at 2:30 a.m. after the marathon game in Miami. By the way, if you missed it, I recorded a podcast last night about the game in Miami, a nice win with the walk-off victory on the DeJounte Murray jump shot. But on that podcast, I talked about how just the schedule situation was not going to be great for the Hawks. They were in Miami. It was late start, long halftime, all that, and then you get into Atlanta late. Again, that's just landing at 2:30. That means still deplaning and getting home. So guys were in late, let's just say. Cleveland had not played since Wednesday. So coming in, the Hawks also had played in the exact same span of time. The Hawks had played 5 games, and the Cavs had played 2 games. Pretty rough stuff. So basically, aside from the game being at home, it was about as bad of a situation as it could possibly be rest-wise for the Hawks. And yes, Trae and Bogey came in questionable, ended up playing for Atlanta, whereas Cleveland was not at full strength in this game. But as we'll come back to in a second, Trae left the game in the fourth quarter, and Quinn Snyder said post-game that they are evaluating him for a concussion. It seemed like he thought that he might have one, honestly. Quinn was pretty open about that. So if that were to be the case, I would be surprised if Trae had a concussion, that he would even travel this week, because the Hawks go on the road for 2 games. So he might be out for a little while. And all that said, it was a bad spot. And I don't want to say it's not all on that. Quinn got the question that you might expect about that, and he kind of downplayed it, as coaches do most of the time. Players and coaches are not going to lean into the fact that they had a bad spot. But from the outside looking in, and from someone who does analysis on this stuff, that's a lot of what transpired here, in my opinion. But still, all that said, again, they didn't play very well. So if you want to look at the sort of landscape of the stats and the way this game kind of flowed, it was the offense that was the problem. So it's ironic because the Hawks have kind of they've actually been playing pretty well defensively in recent days. Arguably their best 3-game defensive stretch of the year was these last 3 games, at least on some level. The defense was actually not bad in this game. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. The offense was bad. A 96 offensive rating for the Hawks in this game. They actually scored only 95 points in the game. So after a long, almost 100-game streak of scoring 100 points or more, the Hawks have now scored sub 100 in 2 of the last 5 games. They didn't score more than 25 points in any quarter in this game, which is actually remarkably inept from this Hawks team standpoint. And a lot of it was just poor shooting. So the Hawks were 14 of 30 at the rim. That's very bad. Sub 50% at the rim is terrible. They were 4% from the field in this one, and they were 11 of 38 from 3. That amounts to about 29%. Not catastrophic from three, but certainly not very good. The three-man combination of Saddiq Bey, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Jalen Johnson. That's three of their top six guys, basically. At least actually three of their top five guys who are not centers. They combined to shoot 2 of 17 from three in this game. Tough to overcome that. Saddiq Bey, as we'll come back to later on, was, I would say, uniquely bad in this game. He really, really struggled in this one. He was not alone. It was not all on Saddiq, but man, he was really rough in this one. That definitely hurt them. A lot of open shots that he missed. The Hawks also got to the line 15 times, which is not enough, and missed 5 of those shots. The only real bright spot for the Hawks offensively was that they won the possession battle in this game. They were pretty good on the offensive glass. They were pretty good not turning the ball over, only 11 turnovers in the game. But the shooting disparity was incredibly wide in this one. Cleveland was pretty good shooting. The Hawks were really bad shooting. Yes, you could point to dead legs, but certainly some poor execution as well. And the Hawks were just not good enough offensively. They're going to not win a lot of games this year if the Hawks have this kind of offensive performance. Defensively, the numbers were better, but they were not great. They had a 117 defensive rating, and honestly, you would certainly guess that the Hawks would have been worse than that if I told you they lost by 21 points. In fact, the Hawks should basically never lose by 21 points in a game where they allow only a 117 defensive rating. That's why the offense was the kind of culprit in this one. Still, though, Cleveland shot the ball well, and the Hawks did not. 51% from the field for the Cavs and 37% from three. Not like ridiculously good, but certainly much better than the Hawks. Atlanta did a good job on the glass in this game on both ends of the floor. They didn't foul a lot. And actually created some turnovers in this game, won that margin, but statistically the entire margin and more was essentially because of the shooting. For reference, one reference point here, Cleveland's supporting pieces, just to name 2 of them, Sam Merrill and George Niang, 2 bench guys for the Cavs, combined to make 9 threes in this game. The Hawks as a team made 11 threes in this one. And by the way, Dean Wade was 5 of 6. So 3 guys who you would not list in their top 3 or 4 players on Cleveland combined for 14 3-pointers alone in this one. And while Donovan Mitchell was 0 of 6 from 3, everybody else shot the ball well. For the Hawks, it was only basically, Trae and Patty Mills that shot the ball well from 3-point range in this one. And DeJounte and Jalen inside the arc. But it is what it is. The Hawks just were not good offensively in this one. The Cavs are good defensively. They are rock solid. Jared Allen's a good defender. Isaac Okoro is a good defender, etc. But this is not the same Cavs without Evan Mobley, all that stuff. And, even without the schedule component, the Hawks didn't play well in this one. And yes, they won the 3 games in a row before this, so it's a little bit more excusable. And it was back-to-back, all that stuff. But you don't want to have this kind of lopsided home loss if you can avoid it. And the Hawks were not able to avoid it in this one. We'll get into kind of how it all unfolded later on, when it comes to kind of the poor shooting, a poor start that kind of snowballed on itself. And then at the end of the podcast, we'll talk about the individual player stuff and a little bit of a deeper dive into Saddiq Bey struggles, etc. Before we get to all of that, though, a word from our sponsors on the show today. Today's show is brought to you by the folks at LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves exactly one question. That is one move that they can make that'll take the business to a next level in 2024. And LinkedIn Jobs knows that the success all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with your business. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find professionals that you're looking for your team faster and to do it for free. I've used LinkedIn Jobs a number of times in my day job and had a lot of different successes in finding the right candidates and doing so quickly. It's not just another job board at LinkedIn. They have a vast network of business professionals, over 1 billion of them, in fact, which makes it the best possible place to hire. Hiring is much easier when you have that many qualified candidates, and so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours of posting at LinkedIn Jobs. Achieving goals in the new year is huge for all of us, including me, and finding the members that you're looking for to add to your team can be incredibly important to accomplish all that you were trying to do this year. And small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires against leading competitors. And they also know that small businesses are wearing so many hats right now, and you might need some help to kind of overcome the time and resources to hire that you might actually want to. And thankfully, though, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, it's quick, and it's easy, and you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, that is linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we'll dive in now to kind of how this one unfolded. And honestly, it was a hideous start with the Hawks that set the tone in this one. So they were down 10-0 out of the gate. And I said this in the moment, so it's not revisionist. They looked like the team that had landed at 2:30 in the morning last night. They didn't score on their first 6 trips offensively. 2 turnovers, a couple of mishaps that were almost turnovers, dribbling the ball off their foot. It was rough. Defensively, the transition stuff was pretty ugly at the outset. They finally got a stop when Capella blocked a shot out of a timeout with like 3 minutes into the game. But before that, it was hideous stuff. And they finally scored on their 7th possession offensively after 2 missed shots. They were down 15-4 in the first 6 minutes and essentially never got back into the game. Now, they were not like blown out from there, but if the game had started after the first 5 minutes, the game would have been a lot closer. It was just that they were behind the entire way. Again, the Hawks never led in this game. That was the landscape, and it kind of followed that blueprint the entire way through. They put a little bit more of a rotation than they had been in recent days. Even before garbage time, 10 guys appeared for the Hawks, although Trent Forrest didn't play very much. He only came in for one stint on Donovan Mitchell. They brought in Patty Mills again after that. Garrison Matthews played a little bit less in this one, but he was not quite as effective in this game as he was yesterday. But kind of the usual suspects in a lot of ways. If you're a new listener, I get questions about this all the time. Yes, I would like to see the Hawks invest in some of the younger guys right now. Kobe Buffkin in particular, who was recalled for this game, but was also inactive. People asking why. Basically, I'm not saying this is the right move, but if the Hawks want Buffkin on the bench, and I think they do, because College Park doesn't play for 4 more days, so there was a reason to kind of have Kobe back up without playing him. With that said, they had to make him active to have him on the bench. They could have had him in uniform in this game, in my opinion. AJ is in different challenging circumstances with all his personal stuff this year, but Buffkin would be, I get why they're not playing him more right now, because he's playing a lot of minutes at College Park. There's lots of development to go along with that. And we'll talk about Bay later on, but he struggled in this game. I get it. I have advocated before the Hawks should be leaning more into the young guys this year because they're not a title-winning team this year. You might as well go ahead and develop some guys, but I'm not the coach. There you go. Also, Bogey had what is like his 20th, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, defensive 3-second call of the year in this game. Also had a funny interaction with Quinn after that where he was not at all happy about his defense in some way, whether it was either that or transition stuff. Kind of a funny when it was caught on camera. They found some rhythm late in the first quarter. Trae was basically invisible for the first 10 minutes of this game. He really was kind of, not like awful, but just not doing anything in a lot of ways. But he kind of found his footing later on in that quarter offensively. But again, the damage was kind of done. They were down the entire way. They had a 77 offensive rating in the first quarter. Rough stuff. And then Cleveland was hot in the second quarter to the point where they made 10 of their first 14 shots, including 5 threes with no turnovers. And that put the Hawks down by 20. After about 18 minutes of the game. So from that point forward, it was pretty much competitive, but they were down by 20, which is bad. They had plenty of issues. I'll stop here for a second. We'll have more of this later on. I thought Bay was kind of uniquely killing them in the first half, and really that happened the entire game. That's just in my notes from the first half. He started out 0-7 from the field. I thought he was a total sieve defensively in this one. I don't want to pile on because I think everybody knows that he's struggling with his confidence right now, probably as a shooter. This is a crazy dry spell for Sadiq, but man, he was really, really bad in this game. And he, again, not alone. Lots of guys did not play well, but he stood out in a lot of ways to a lot of different people. There wasn't one nice stretch from Jalen Johnson at the end of the first half. He had 3 or 4 buckets that were, I would say, badly needed late in the quarter. A nice dunk in traffic, a nice mid-ranger, had a nice help side block defensively, and they were down only 14 at halftime. So it wasn't like it was over at halftime. That little stretch by Jalen pushed them up a little bit. Still offensively, it was rough sledding, but they were in the game. They ran the play for Bay coming out of halftime, which I actually didn't mind. We'll touch on this later on too, probably, but Quinn got a question post-game, I believe it was from Lauren Williams of the AJC, about Sadiq and kind of just like what you do when a guy's not making shots right now and doing all that stuff. And Quinn gave a very positive answer, and people were like surprised or frustrated by that. And I'll just say this, like there is absolutely no reason for Quinn Snyder to trash Sadiq Bey at a press conference. Like that's not what any coach would do. So like I don't know what fans are looking for there. We all understand, at least I'll say it, like he's not playing well at all. I was very early on the Sadiq defensive problem thing. Offensively this year it's been rough, but anyway, they tried to sort of infuse him early in the third quarter with a couple of plays sort of called for him. That was one that didn't work there. He had 2 threes. And honestly, it's like kind of hard to watch. He had 2 threes that like rolled all the way in and around and out. And it was like, man, he just can't get the ball to go in the basket right now. But he was not alone. The Hawks didn't score the first 2.5 minutes of the third quarter. They were down by 21 points. They did find it a little bit midway through the quarter. Patty Mills hit 2 threes. Murray got into the paint twice for some buckets that were good plays. But the Cavs were making shots. They were 5-8 from 3 to start the third quarter. So they couldn't really make a run. They played DeJounte the whole third quarter, kind of pushing to try to go for it a little bit. but didn't really work. Late in the third, it was a 10-1 run by Cleveland to kind of break it open for the last time. And once that happened, it was essentially over. Like, it wasn't like mathematically over, but it was basically over. The Hawks were down by 23 points at the end of the third quarter. And I said this in a moment. I know this is a familiar refrain if you're listening to this podcast on a regular basis. I generally think Quinn leaves in players too long when the game is academic. Mostly when they're losing, but even when they're winning, they kind of just like press to the finish line. That's kind of what Nate used to do, actually, in a lot of ways. This is a spot where, given what I said before about how bad the schedule spot was for the Hawks in this game, they have a long trip, a long 2-game trip. That was kind of the NBA is not being kind to them with this trip that's coming up right now. I thought that they didn't need to kind of press on, especially with guys like Bogey and Clint and Trae, who's banged up with illness and all that stuff. And they played like they were doing a normal rotation in the fourth quarter. Also note, that's when Trae left the game. He tried to take a charge. He got ran over, and it took a blow to the head. It was actually reviewed for a flagrant. Ended up going to the locker room right away. Again, no official update other than what Quinn said on the podium. I was actually the one that asked Quinn about Trae, and he actually kind of led with the fact that he thinks he might be concussed, and they're reviewing him for that. Obviously, the performance team will have the final verdict on that. If it's anywhere close, I can't imagine him flying. Look, I'm not reporting that. It's that if you kind of do the math on this, if he has a concussion, it's obviously a big if, but if he has one, and that was certainly a possibility based on what Quinn said, you don't put a guy on a plane for 5.5, 6 hours, and the Hawks are flying like midday on Sunday to the West Coast. So if that is the case, I can't imagine Trae flying with the team and playing on Monday. I guess he would be possible for Wednesday, but generally speaking, again, it's a 2-game trip. You don't want to have that guy fly across country for one potential game. So it would not stun me at all if Trae missed this road trip. So keep an eye on that. Maybe he's okay. That would be obviously a good scenario for the Hawks, but bad timing there because look, that happened after the game it was not over, but it was in that gray area where like they could have pulled the plug and they didn't, and then Trae went down during that. So that's actually unfortunate on a number of levels. The Hawks did have the one run in the fourth quarter, a 9-0 run to get within 16. That kind of made them think that they could keep coming back and they wouldn't pull the plug anymore. But honestly, that never felt like anything like it was an actual comeback. Just enough to basically ensure they didn't punt the rest of the game. Finally, they pulled everybody with 3 minutes to go. It was never closer than 16 down the stretch. In fact, the Hawks trailed by 15 or more, I believe, the entire second half, something like that. So, yeah, it was what it was. There was not a whole lot of bright spots. They lost every quarter until the fourth, and even then in the fourth, it was total garbage time for 3 minutes. So, not a lot of positivity to be shared in this one. We'll talk about the player stuff in a second, but only a couple of guys even showed flashes. Like, nobody had it in this game. The only guy who was not on a back-to-back was Trae, and even then, like, Trae had an illness yesterday. I can't imagine he was 100%, plus he left the game in the fourth quarter. So, rough sledding does not mean that you erase everything else, but even then, I tried to say on yesterday's podcast, like, I try not to get too high or too low. Even when the Hawks are winning 3 games in a row, I was not coming on here and giving you rainbows. With this loss tonight, I'm not going to tell you the sky's falling either. It's just that this is a team that's in the middle right now. I think that they are better than their record probably, but at the same time, they're not blowing anybody away. They're not playing extremely well, and they're in this nether region, which we'll talk about later on as well, where the trade stuff's going to flow. I purposely did not chalk trade last night because they had just won 2 games in a row, and Jase was part of that, but a lot of stuff still swirling around him. And it is what it is. But I'll sort of leave the game flow portion of the podcast now and just say that it was basically one trend line down, and there were kind of ripples up in this one, but it was essentially never particularly in doubt. There was not really one big run in the entire game for the Hawks to kind of make them believe. And if you don't have that and you have no legs, it's tough to kind of get over the hump. So there you go. We'll have more of this game coming up when it comes to the player stuff, and then at the end of the podcast, some trade discussion on the latest rumor mill roundup. But before we get to all of that stuff, a word from our sponsors on the show. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, something says we actually had to change ourselves, so just expanding on what we're already doing right in our lives. Maybe you finally organized one part of your space and you want to tackle another part, or maybe you're looking at supplements every morning and now you want to actually eat breakfast to go along with them. Therapy helps you to find your strengths, and you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make the changes that you're really looking to make and have them stick in your life. Therapy can give you something that actually to look forward to, something to make you feel grounded, and even to have you be given the tools to manage everything going on in your life. And if therapy is something that you're thinking about starting in the near future, give BetterHelp a try for that therapy. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and they'll actually match you with a licensed therapist. If you ever want to change therapists, you can do so at any time for no additional cost, and they will make everything easy for you at BetterHelp. Celebrate the progress that you've already made with the folks at BetterHelp. And the place to go is betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, it's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and the NFL playoffs are now ongoing. There's something getting on in the action, though, with the folks at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet at FanDuel. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, at FanDuel. The app is safe and secure. It's easy to use as well. There's so many different options and ways to bet at FanDuel. They have live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find the popular parlays available at FanDuel. And also, you can find bets in the new Explore tab. They have all the old standards as well: point spreads, over-unders, money lines, player props, future bets, and much more. And they have the entire range of sports at FanDuel as well. The NFL is in the news right now, of course, the NBA. MLB futures stuff, WNBA, college basketball, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and much more. They have the Hawks angles as well, including a full slate of offerings with each and every game involving the Hawks, plus futures, player award stuff, and much more. And now is an awesome time. Sign up with folks at FanDuel Sportsbook, and the place to go is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make your first bet a layup with the folks at FanDuel. One more time, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, into the player stuff. Again, it was not pretty along the way in this one. Seth Lundy, AJ Griffin, and Bruno Fernando played the last 3 minutes of the game. Not a whole lot to speak of there. AJ had 2 points. Lundy hit a 3. Good effort from Seth. Not too much to add there. Trent Forrest played 6 minutes. Didn't score. Took 1 shot. There you have it. Garrison Matthews was really good last night. Not as good tonight. He made a 3, but not his best work, I didn't think, overall. Patty Mills made 2 threes. Obviously, he still remains a very good shooter. By the way, Garrison Matthews, I think, is still, after tonight, like the qualified leader in bench three-point shooting. So he's been electrically good as a shooter in this one, this season, I should say. Patty shot the ball well in this game. Good defensive effort. I don't think he was like fantastic, but he gave them some decent minutes. Bogey had 14 points and 28 minutes off the bench. 4 or 5 on twos, but only 1 of 6 from 3. Had 4 assists. I thought he looked okay. He was questionable coming into the night with some ankle soreness, so I'm not sure if he was 100%, but certainly he was in the mix. Okongwu struggled in this one. 1 point on 3 shots, 6 rebounds, did have 2 assists, 3 fouls, -10. Not his best night at the office by any stretch of the imagination. Jared Allen actually gives him some trouble usually. That was the case in this game as well. Speaking of that, Capella was just okay, if that. 6 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks and a steal. He had some nice defensive moments in this one, but offensively it was kind of clunky, as he often is. We'll save Sadiq for a second. Jalen Johnson actually had some pretty good moments, I thought. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks and a steal for Jalen. He was one of the bright spots, I thought, in this game. He wasn't like his absolute apex best, but I thought he played better than most in this game for sure, despite the 1 of 5 from 3 and 3 missed free throws from Jalen in this one. All right, Sadiq Bey. Whew, it was rough for Sadiq. I teased that earlier, but truly, and I don't ever want to pile on, but he was about as bad as a guy can be in a prominent role. No points, 0 of 12 from the field, 0 of 6 from 3 for Sadiq. So not only 0 of 6 from 3, but 0 of 6 from 2 in this one. They have 7 rebounds, 2 assists, -24, game worse. That was kind of earned on his behalf. Beyond this night, where he was actively bad, he's not shooting the ball well, let's just say, for a long time now. It's a 20-game sample, so that isn't going to be world-changing, but that's a quarter of a season. Sadiq is now shooting 33% from the field over 20 games and 24.6 from 3 in 20 games. And for a guy that has to make shots to provide value on offense with the way that he plays defensively, that's tough to take. And this is kind of the pinnacle of that. Like, he was being left open. He had shots that were, he shoots this flat ball. It's not always the prettiest, but he's some rim outs. He had a couple of not like blown layups, but like layup adjacent shots that he missed. It was brutal, honestly. I don't want to overstate it, but it was really kind of hard to watch. And look, I've said for a long time, Sadiq's defense is a problem. It's always been a problem for the Hawks. It's just a problem that's a bigger one when he's not making shots. So he actively killed them in this game. He was not alone, but it was really, really bad. He actually matched. It's actually courtesy of my friend Wes Morton from Peachtree Hoops to pull this number, but he matched the most shots by any player in the NBA this year without a make at 0 of 12 from the field. So hopefully a night to forget. Quinn was positive. So was Jalen Johnson, who spoke on the podium tonight. That's how it should go. Coaches, players should be lifting him up. And people are asking me kind of for action items on Sadiq, and it's like, with DeAndre Hunter out, it's not an option to just not play Sadiq Bey. That's one thing I'll just say out there. I'm like, yes, they have other guys that they can play more, perhaps, but they've invested in Sadiq Bey. He has a record of being a rotation level player. He's not playing well right now, but like, I don't think that just sending him to Siberia is going to do anything. I do think that the one thing that you have to do if you're Sadiq is just keep shooting. And Quinn said that. So did Jalen. It's true. It's been kind of rough, but I think it's just kind of tough to take. Now, with Hunter back, it would be nice to have him. He's a much better defender than Bey. He's a much better player, in my opinion, than Bey on the whole. But without Hunter, like, yeah, you could go to AJ Griffin, but he's looked bad when he's played in recent days. Garrison Matthews is certainly a one-position player at the two. The other guys are small. Like, yeah, you could play Seth Lundy, who I like a lot, but you're not going to just bury Sadiq Bey. That's not really an option, and we'll see. So I think he'll bounce back on some level. Like, I think he's due for some regression, but it was a rough one at the office for Sadiq, and I'll stop piling on now. To the backcourt, DeJounte had a good game. I thought not like incredible, but certainly the most productive game of anybody on the team. 24 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists for DeJounte in 35 minutes. He was everyone was in the minus except for the actual deep bench guys, so not really something to add there, but he was at least efficient-ish. Not really. 24 points on 20 shots is fine. It's actually better than it was last night. 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He played fine. I thought he got to the rim a few times. He was only 2 of 7 from 3, but was actually 8 of 12 on twos. That's positive. And he was certainly one of the brighter spots in this game. Trae had a rough start and was okay once he got it going. Had 15 points in 28 minutes, 5 assists for Trae in this one, 3 or 4 from 3. And then the concussion, which I talked about earlier, but just to say it one more time, obviously concussions are not great for anybody, but the timing is not great with the flights. I am preparing for him to not play in these next 2 games, but we'll see. Injury updates will be coming on Monday, I'm sure, on Sunday, I should say, at some point, about whether he travels, all that stuff. But we'll leave it there. That's all I have on the game itself. It was not a fun night at the office. Of course, it makes it a little bit easier that the Hawks won the previous 2 games because Murray hit those big shots to pull them out of the fire. So in the end, their record has not gotten worse in recent days, but the performance level has not been the highest. So there you go. Speaking of that, I did several minutes on trade stuff on the show on Wednesday, which is still relevant right now. Also did a podcast on Thursday with the folks at Locked On Knicks. I was mostly the guest, but I was answering questions about DeJounte and the Knicks for the most part. And I was going to talk about some trade stuff on last night's show, but I decided to punt that because the game was so crazy. And Murray was, of course, hot with the winners. But a bunch of like rumbling stuff in the last couple of days. There was some reporting from Mike Scotto earlier this week that the Hawks are not looking to take back salary in a deal for DeJounte, at least salary past the season. I've heard that kind of as well. It's another reminder that the Hawks are currently in a situation that I've talked about numerous times, that they are not willing to pay the tax for next year that I understand. I won't do the entire thing again, but if you trade Murray and not take money back from next year, that'd be a way to get the Hawks under the tax. And as a reminder, if they did nothing this year, the Hawks would be well over the tax if they were just to run back this roster plus Sadiq Bey. So good context there, and the Hawks are at least reportedly not looking to take back long-term salary. That's not like a deal breaker, I don't think, but anyway. Elsewhere from Mike, he reinforced some of the reporting out there on Wednesday that it's kind of known right now that the Hawks are looking for 2 first-round picks, at least the equivalent of that for DeJounte in a deal. Both Mike and Jovan Buha of The Athletic reported discussions around a deal with the Lakers for basically DeJounte, for D'Angelo Russell, Jalen Hood-Schifino, who was the first-round pick last year for the Lakers, a 2029 first-round pick for LA, and, quote, additional draft compensation. They don't have any more firsts to offer, but the Lakers do have up to 4 pick swaps and up to 4 second-round picks. It wouldn't be all of that, but that's notable to me. That's a very kind of like what we can offer you kind of offer from the Lakers. Maybe throw Max Christie in there too. But Russell is not a fit with the Hawks. That's not a surprise. I think everyone kind of knows that. Russell is a point guard. He's also someone who can't play defense. Tough spot there for him in Atlanta. So the reporting from Mike in particular was that the Hawks would be looking to flip him elsewhere in a deal. So that could be a holdup in this trade. If the Hawks just will not take Russell, then they have to have a third team involved, and I don't know where that's at right now, but uh, it could be Rui Hachimura. But anyway, the reported discussion that was kind of getting out there the last couple of days was this Russell package, but all indications are, both in reporting and what I've heard behind the scenes, that the Hawks do not want Russell. So either that gets changed, or a third team has to get involved to take on Russell. Chris Haynes also reported that the Bucks are among multiple teams who are, quote, registering interest in trading for DeJounte Murray. Kind of a long shot for Milwaukee. I won't go deep into this right now, but they just don't have assets to offer. They have no first round picks to offer right now because they're all out from the Dame Lillard trade and the Drew Holiday trade before that. They do have Andre Jackson and Marjon Beauchamp, who are intriguing like sweeteners, and they have a good second round pick this year from Portland, but it's kind of hard to get there. So like there's three ways to do it. You could do like a Bobby Portis and assets move. You could do a Pat Connaughton and assets move, but those are harder to do in season because it'd be like a 4-for-1 trade. They could do Chris Middleton, but I don't think that's going to happen probably. And they could do Brook Lopez in a deal if the Hawks also sent Capella out. But anyway, it seems unlikely to me. I did some digging on that. Everyone's kind of like, I don't see a path for that. I think Milwaukee might be interested, but I don't know if they have the scratch, basically. Non-Murray stuff. Last thing here on the trade market. Ian Begley reported that the Hawks are among teams that have interest specifically in Quentin Grimes, who I talked about a lot on that podcast with the Knicks guys. But I think that Grimes would be a part of a Murray trade, probably, if that happened with the Knicks. And they also could trade for Grimes separately. I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but he's cheap enough where the Hawks could just trade for Quentin Grimes. It wouldn't stun me, but there you go. And yeah, I mean, there's some Hunter stuff out there. He's available. Capella's available. Those are kind of the old standbys. But nothing is like heated up to the level of emergency podcast right now in recent days. I think that we're kind of holding tight. I know there were some Hawks fans that got real excited the last couple of days about DeJounte and how the Hawks could never trade him now because he's still very much available, still very much on the market. We'll see what happens there. The deadline is still 2.5 weeks away, so there could be some ebbs and flows here. Could be deals at any moment, could be deals or nothing happens until February 8th, whatever it's going to be. But yeah, just sort of a reset there, and I'm sure we'll have more trade stuff in the future, but nothing has risen to the point of me leading the show with it. And if that happens, we will break in and talk about some trade stuff in the near future. All right, that's all I have on this Saturday. It's actually now Sunday as I'm recording this podcast, deep into the night here. As I mentioned before, kind of in passing, the Hawks have this very strange road trip. So usually teams go to the West Coast for 4, 5, even 6 games, including the Hawks. But the Hawks have a 2-game trip to face the Kings and the Warriors on Monday and on Wednesday. 2 late-night games on the East Coast. The Kings game is first, and the Hawks have the games against the Warriors after that, and the Hawks-Kings have some draft pick stuff involved there. But in addition to the scheduled spot tonight, this is not a trip that anyone thinks is normal. I was talking to someone today, like, you don't often see this. So doesn't mean it's a disaster, but there's none. Also, you might think that they would build an extra day of rest on either side of the deal, but the trip, I should say. But you have this spot where the Hawks fly on Sunday. They play on Monday. Yes, they have Tuesday off in the Bay Area, but then they play Wednesday, they fly on Thursday, and then they're in action again on Friday. So there's no really rest for the weary. They're winnable games, but maybe no Trae. They're still on the road, bad schedule spot, so it's kind of a tough spot for the Hawks. And we'll get into all those games, and I will be up late. And for those of you that I'm sure won't be listening to, not everybody's going to be able to stay up late for those games, so I'll have breakdowns as I always would on the podcast after the game on Monday and a game on Wednesday. And that's a good reminder to please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, places like Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Ratings, reviews, all that fun stuff. Please share the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Also, we have bonus content on the audio only feeds from Locked On Sports Atlanta folks. That is actually should be available for you on your audio platforms anywhere after these games. And no less from me, just extra content. If you like to bounce around and listen to more on the Atlanta Hawks, we will have that for you. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Also write about the Hawks regularly at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I am done rambling on today's podcast. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you at the very latest after the game on Monday evening.